Hi, everyone. So today I am going to talk about relationships during the Ascension process and all the changes that are happening for people in this aspect of their lives. It's a very important part of life for most people, right? And the changes can be really painful at times, especially if you don't understand what's happening on a deeper level due to the powerful 5D frequencies of light that are now streaming onto the planet that are causing a lot of these changes. If you're like a lot of people, you've probably experienced some difficult conflicts and divisions over the last few years with family members and spouses, partners, and friends. A lot of people have been going through this. And maybe you've been finding that old, painful relationship patterns that have never been clearly resolved are now coming to the surface. You may be realizing that in order to continue to rise in vibration, you're being compelled to take a good look at the relationships currently in your life and seeing what may no longer be resonating with the higher frequencies you're now shifting into. In particular, one thing you may be finding is that certain people you've related to for much of your life are people you have little in common with anymore. This can be confusing and unsettling. People who were once so important in your life might seem to be just drifting away now. And you perhaps maybe don't miss them very much, but there may not yet be anyone else replacing them in your life. And because of this, you may be feeling isolated and somewhat lonely these days, with very few people, if any, that you can really call friends anymore. And even those relationships with people you're still feeling some resonance with could be presenting challenges you haven't encountered before. Perhaps communication has somehow become more difficult with them, as old, unhealed, and unacknowledged traumas between you that you never really addressed before are now resurfacing. Maybe you're finding your negative emotions are more difficult to hide than ever before with them. Somehow, honesty and authenticity are now being demanded of you, whether you like it or not. In general, the ascension process tends to bring up all the unawakened patterns you're expressing with others, patterns that continue to cause you and others suffering and conflict, like disappointment, grief, fear, anger, hurt. All those things are coming up. The 5D frequencies now on the planet are highlighting these patterns and letting you know you can't take them with you into the fifth dimension. So if you're experiencing any of these kinds of challenges, be aware you are not alone. Many people now are having similar experiences in their relationships. In some cases, it's apparent that if they're going to continue on in these relationships, things are going to have to change rather dramatically. Some people are discovering that no matter what they do or say, it's evident the relationship just can't go on, or that a rift has occurred and will probably always remain no matter what you say or do. The exposed differences are just too important at this point. And people are finding that, once honest opinions and emotions have been revealed, certain family relationships will never again be what they were. Many marriages are becoming very rocky. Some, even after long years of being together, are actually breaking up. Also, business partnerships are splitting up. People are having to learn how to let go of loved ones and friends who have been in their lives for a long time. Now, in other relationships, people are managing to maintain the relationship, but it's become clear that certain changes in their behaviors and relating patterns have to occur. For example, if a couple has been playing out what might be called an abuser-victim type of scenario in the relationship, even if it's just on an emotional level, it becomes clear that this can no longer continue. And generally, it's the one who's been putting up with abuse or disrespect for a long time. That's the one that's waking up and realizing they can't be in that relationship any longer in the way it's been. And this, of course, is good news, but it's still usually scary and disorienting when this realization happens. Or there might be a relationship in which both people have been holding on to past hurts and betrayals or anger for a long time. And they find that they just can't stuff, these negative emotions any longer. They can't hide things from each other anymore. If either person hasn't been expressing his or her true feelings, or if they've been dishonest in any way, the truth is now coming out. And this is true too if, people have been blaming each other for the hurt or anger that they feel, not taking responsibility for what they themselves have contributed to the conflicts. They're finding that they now have to take responsibility for their own actions. And if they don't, it's likely the relationship won't last. Patterns of blame can no longer persist in a relationship that's going to continue. And then there's another pattern that's also being highlighted in certain relationships. And that's when two people are too emotionally dependent on each other. This too is no longer working very well. Everyone is now being compelled to become responsible for creating their own happiness and their own sense of feeling valuable and lovable. And speaking of dependency, there's something I'd like to point out here. And it's just around vocabulary, but it's important. And it's about the word codependent. A lot of people use this word to describe a couple, like I've just described, who's overly emotionally dependent on each other. And the word really does seem to describe that. It makes sense. And yet the correct psychological usage of the word actually refers to something different. It's meant to describe a person who does not take care of their own needs. Someone who is overly nice, overly generous, overly forgiving with people, even with those who abuse them in one way or another, due to a lack of self-worth. I point this out because it's common for spiritual people or light workers to be people who are generally loving and generous and who tend to act as peacemakers, wanting to avoid conflict and negativity, right? And these are all wonderful traits, unless there is also a tendency toward a lack of self-worth. Because if there is, then the person may become codependent and not be in touch with their own feelings of hurt and anger. Someone who stuffs these emotions in order to remain loving and positive and spiritual, no matter what is happening. And so anyone with this tendency is also being greatly challenged at this point. Anger that has been unconscious, that's been pushed down from years of being a good and loving person no matter what, of being the peacemaker, the one who always tries to understand and forgive other people who've been hurtful and uncaring and even abusive. This anger is now coming to the surface, and it's healthy. Again, this is because honesty and authenticity are now being demanded of us. No longer can someone who has done this for years control the feelings of hurt and rage that have been pushed down for so long. Greater self-worth and self-respect are rising up within them and demanding to be heard. And this may break up a relationship if the person who's been taking advantage of the codependent person can't adapt to treating them with greater caring and respect. And if they can't, it can initially be painful for the codependent person, but in the end, they will be freed of someone who was probably never really their friend or true lover to begin with, right? Okay, so those are some common patterns that are being challenged these days. I think you probably recognize them. But there's another kind of situation that has created conflict in people's relationships as well in recent times. Something, too, I'm sure you've been all too aware of. And that has been around the choices people have made about taking the vaccine. And as we know, family members have battled with each other over this issue. Spouses have been amazed in finding they're on opposite sides of the question. And friends, after years of feeling so similarly about all things in life, are disappointed to find how they don't agree on this issue. It's really baffling. And as a result, we have seen a clear split taking place in humanity as a whole between those taking the shot and those who are adamantly opposed to it. And similar issues arose in the US during the last presidential election, right? In that arena as well, hard and fast lines were drawn between family members and friends. It's been really painful. And those same issues may now be arising again, given that 2024 is now on the horizon. But what's important to realize, however, is that although these particular health and political issues are very real and seem to be the cause of these conflicts between people, the divisions between them would probably be occurring anyway, simply because, again, of the ever more powerful 5D frequencies that are now flooding the Earth. As I say, these energies are forcing to the surface all hidden conflicts and differences, imbalances, and unhealthy agendas that already exist within relationships. They've just been hidden. And they're situations that can't be taken into the fifth dimension. All patterns that have been developed in the old 3D reality that are not based in love and respect and freedom must now change to match the new frequencies. So the conflicts and differences either need to be resolved or the relationships probably will not survive. And in reality, what's actually happening is that people are making their decisions to go in whichever direction is right for them at this time. As souls, we are each being inwardly directed onto the path that will best serve our own unique evolutionary growth. It can be painful to see loved ones going in a different direction than we are, but as sovereign beings, we must all make our own choices. And if it's clear we're headed in different directions, we got to be able to let go of the old ties that we've had with people that really no longer exist if we really look at it. We need to be courageous and trusting that if love truly is there between us and another person, at some point we will be reunited again in some way. And in truth, no matter what occurs, the love we feel for them will still remain in our hearts, right? So there's another interesting type of relationship change that's also occurring for some that I want to mention here because it too can be confusing and you may relate to it. And this has less to do with conflict and more to do with simply feeling an energetic shift in a relationship. And this is where it can feel like something has just somehow changed, sometimes rather abruptly, or that something that has always been present in the relationship has disappeared. There is somehow less tension and less of a sense of being tied together. There's a little more freedom, maybe less struggle occurring. There's more space for reflection, maybe, greater clarity, and a surprisingly greater ease in communicating. And yet, there's also an unfamiliar sense of separation between the two people, a type of untethering. If this sounds familiar to you about an important relationship, it's likely you are experiencing the ending of a karmic contract with that person. And this may come about simply due to the fact that you have finally completed the karma you came in to resolve with the other person. Or it may simply be happening because the whole corrupted karmic structure that humanity has struggled under for eons of time is finally beginning to collapse. And karma everywhere is gradually dissolving. But whatever the case, the feeling is that you've completed some contract that was there between you, and you're both now free to determine if there's any reason to continue staying together or in close contact with each other anymore. And this can be a greatly freeing experience, but it can also be disorienting. If it's with a family member or a long-term relationship with a friend or a partner, it can also be greatly disturbing. There could be a sense of, well, what now? Where do we go from here? Do we still want to be in relationship with each other? It can be kind of hard to put in words, but this is the feeling. And when this feeling of completion occurs, it may mean you'll choose to stay together, but you will likely be engaged in a freer, more detached way of relating to each other. And new agreements, whether they're acknowledged or not, will probably be made. As you get to see each other more clearly and come to know each other in new ways without that familiar knot of karmic connection present, you will likely go through a period of, some awkwardness, but you'll somehow find a new and freer rhythm to be with each other. However, the ending of a karmic contract can also mean that it's time to terminate the relationship, including a marriage. The karma is complete. So it feels like there's no need to be together or in close contact with each other anymore. And as scary as this may initially be for both people, if they've been married or if it's a close family member, they will probably eventually find that the sense of freedom they feel from no longer being tied to someone in this karmic way is greatly liberating. So all of these kinds of changes are occurring now for people in their relationships. But what I'd like to speak about now is about 3D relationships in general and why there has always tended to be so many conflicts and difficulties people have had to deal with in them. Why so much work has always seemed to be necessary to make relationships, and especially intimate ones, right? How to make them work. Have you ever wondered this? Why is this? As I've discussed in other podcasts recently, the main reason humanity has had difficulty in life in general, and in relationships in particular, is due to dark forces that have been controlling and manipulating humanity for thousands of years through implants and a type of AI programming. These have kept us stuck in a controlled, low-frequency experience of the third dimension. Now, thankfully, with the ascension of the planet now occurring, these forces are finally losing their power and will eventually be gone. But meanwhile, it's important to remember that these controlling forces are still somewhat impacting you, especially if you find yourself moving into self-judgment or blame of others in how they're relating to you when conflict arises between you. Because of these unseen forces, it can sometimes be really difficult to be clear and stand fully in the light and the love that you inherently are, and to relate to other people and to yourself in, loving and respectful ways that you might wish to. So remember to go easy on yourself when you're having difficulty in your relationships. It has not been a fair playing field you've been living in. However, even knowing all this about the unseen forces that have kept humanity in ignorance and suffering, it is possible for you to take measures to speed up your ascension process and create smoother relationships at this point. You can take charge of fully letting go of low-frequency tendencies you've been compelled to adopt within these relationships. You can become aware of any unhealthy patterns you've been running and take measures to consciously shift what you've been doing into higher frequency patterns. And you can begin by, without any judgment or blame, by just identifying patterns you have that you've always known to be somewhat dysfunctional. And there are certainly plenty of books and webinars and videos out there that can help you see, the most common ones that people have, and you can learn solutions on, how to shift these patterns into healthier ones. And you're probably aware of them, and you've likely done, some healing work around them. And all this is great. However, from a fifth dimensional point of view, there is one issue that is rarely, if ever, named in any of these books or videos that in many ways has been involved in all relationship difficulties. And that is the common 3D belief that the purpose of relationships with family and spouses and partners and good friends is to give us, through their love and their approval, an essential sense that we are lovable, valuable, and important. In the old third dimensional paradigm you likely grew up in, you were probably taught that your loved ones were there to fulfill this emotional need, right? This belief can sound so right and so warm and cozy, and it's so familiar. And it is appropriate for children to feel and believe this. They need to feel protected and loved and valuable, just as they are, in order to grow up with a healthy sense of self-worth. But if, as an adult, you still carry this belief that it's the responsibility of other people in your life to fill your basic emotional needs, it may be what gets in your way to forming healthy relationships at this point, especially intimate ones. Now, to some degree, you may have managed to survive certain situations in your life till now because you have felt your emotional needs to be at least mostly met by your relationships. But as you move forward on your ascension path, it can be valuable to question the belief that people close to you are there to do this for you. Is that really the purpose of relationship in adulthood? If you think about it, you can see how this assumption includes a belief that you are somehow not inherently whole or able to experience your own value, your own lovableness, and natural worth on your own. You need other people to give you this. And more importantly, it means you must continue to put up with all the grief and rage you can sometimes feel when your loved ones don't give you the love and the feeling of being valued and respected that you feel they should be giving to you. How many conflicts throughout your life has this tacit agreed upon arrangement that your loved ones are there to fill your emotional needs created for you? How many times have the people you've assigned the task of meeting these needs fallen short in fulfilling them? And how many times have you fallen short in taking care of their basic emotional needs? How many times have you or your loved one painfully exclaimed, "You're not meeting my needs"? So many power struggles steeped in feelings of hurt and betrayal and guilt arise out of this usually unconscious agreement between people that they are there to fill each other's basic emotional needs. Such a sense of helplessness can arise when you've given the power to someone else to be responsible for your own happiness and well-being. If you look at this issue, you can see how it points back to your need as you shift into fifth dimensional consciousness to truly develop a sense of unconditional love for yourself and to be able to rely on that first and foremost for your sense of feeling valuable, loved, and respected. You need to see that if you're going to truly find a freedom from hurt and blame and anger in your relationships, it is not the job of other people to give you a sense of this emotional wholeness. It's up to you. Whatever love and validation others offer to you can simply serve to enhance this basic sense you already have about yourself. Now, if you're used to having relationships based on the typical 3D model I've just described, it may sound as if a relationship without this agreement to take responsibility for each other's needs would be an unemotional and disconnected type of relationship. But unless you experience one in which this is not the agreement, you really can't know this. When you move into fifth dimensional consciousness, you can find that without these emotional types of demands, you can have warm and loving and highly fulfilling 5D relationships that run smoothly without a lot of conflict. You see that although you do receive a great deal of love and respect and support from your loved one, you're not dependent on their feelings for you in order for you to feel lovable and valuable and important. The love you receive from others is a bonus, an overflow that's much appreciated and valued, but it's not needed at the core of your being because you are able to provide the love you need from within yourself. And there is therefore no emotional demand that the others you're in relationship with give you the love you need in order to feel good about yourself. And very importantly, your love for them springs solely from your true caring and compassion for them, not from a need that they provide you with something in return. It's an unconditional love, free of demands that a person act in a certain way or be something different from who they are in order for you to love them. So, of course, feeling and expressing this kind of unconditional love for someone demands first that you learn how to love yourself in that same unconditional manner, right? In a certain way, the task of learning self-love is actually at the core of all your Ascension learning. Being cut off from the true knowing of yourself as a spiritual being, as you have been for so long in the third dimension, has made it next to impossible to know your true inherent lovableness and value. But thankfully, your journey back into full consciousness at this point is likely awakening you once again to the incredible magnificence of who you are and how you truly don't need a lot of outer reinforcement or reflection to let you know and experience your inherent value and beauty. It's becoming more self-evident. And among other things, this realization can make your relationships with others much more fulfilling and able to flow with greater ease and joy. Meanwhile, finding your way through this shift of awareness toward 5D relationships can still be very challenging, though. So it's really important to find compassion for yourself and to rest in this higher dimensional embrace of yourself. Can be a huge transition, especially in relationships you've been in for a long time. It's just helpful to remember that you're emerging from perhaps thousands of years of awkward and unawakened attempts to find love and safety through your relationships with other people who have not been awake or fulfilled themselves. There are a lot of age-old beliefs and illusions you need to courageously contemplate and then shed in order to discover what truly free and awake relationships can be like. But as you do let go of your old beliefs and habits around relationship and learn to truly give yourself the love you need, there is, just incredible freedom and richness and joy that you can discover in your new 5D kinds of relationships. And if you'd like help in this process of learning to love yourself more, I did recently release a podcast called Learning to Love Yourself Unconditionally that you might find helpful, as this really is an important subject for everybody, in this ascension process. Now, one of the things you do need to learn, however, as you begin to learn about unconditional love, is to distinguish between unconditional love you feel for someone and unconditionally allowing them to do something that is inherently hurtful or disrespectful towards you. You know how some people believe that unconditional love means allowing and putting up with any kind of behavior toward them? As I was saying before about being codependent, this belief is indicative of a lack of self-worth and self-love, especially in an intimate relationship. It's really important to find ways to behave in a sensitive and respectful manner toward each other. If this can't be resolved, it may be necessary to cease being intimate. For instance, if your partner insists on having an open relationship and this is not what will work for you, you would want to cease your intimate relationship with them, right? Your love for yourself would demand this. You could continue to love them and be in relationship with them in some way, but you might choose to not be with them anymore in an intimate way. It's just important to distinguish between unconditional love and unconditional allowance of hurtful behaviors towards yourself. So, as we can see, there are a lot of different relationship challenges being caused by the high energy 5D frequencies these days. And if you're experiencing any of them, it's important to realize that as difficult as they may be to navigate, they do have a very important and positive purpose. They are here to assist you in your evolutionary process. They're offering profound opportunities for creating greater honesty, integrity, and freedom in your relationships. And they're also serving to awaken you to who you truly are beyond your third dimensional ideas about your identity. And in addition, there is also the opportunity now, both for yourself and those you remain in relationship with, to experience a much deeper love than ever before, and to see how your commitment to each other can be greatly strengthened. The 5D frequencies are ultimately coming in to set right all relationships that are destined to remain in the coming years of ascension into the fifth dimension. No dysfunctional pattern can survive this shift and must be resolved in one way or another. And it's good to be aware also that in certain cases, in order for a relationship to heal and rise in vibration, sometimes a drastic event, such as a death or a severe medical diagnosis may occur. And a lot of fear and upset may ensue from this. But when the people involved can take responsibility for themselves and are motivated to emotionally mature, their relationship can not only survive, but actually greatly deepen when a deeply disturbing event occurs. They can experience a more profound love connection than ever before with their loved one, as well as greater respect. So it's just important to, see anything like this that happens in this higher paradigm, that it's there for a purpose. And meanwhile, if you're having a difficult time letting go of old familiar relationships with people who seem to be traveling in a different direction at this point, it can be helpful to see your situation from a higher perspective. You can become aware that a space is opening up for new people to come into your life, people more like yourself, people who perhaps have a similar spiritual mission as you do, people who more harmoniously resonate with your worldview, people who are part of your soul tribe. Be aware that a new life is actually appearing in front of you during these times. So it's important to look around you and see who does seem to be on the same path with you. And tune into them energetically. Feel into them with your body as well as with your mind and your emotions. Is there an energetic resonance between you? Some of these people you may already know, but you've not thought about getting to know more deeply. Others may be brand new in your acquaintance, or the only connection you can have with them at this time is online. Nonetheless, it can be important now to try to deepen these relationships. These people, as I say, are likely part of your soul tribe, those you will be traveling together with on your continuing ascension path into 5D. And they may be really surprising to you. You may be destined to work with them on humanitarian projects together, maybe. You may share similar passions you never knew about before. And very importantly, you will be finding that loving human connections are going to be extremely important in the coming days when even greater turmoil and chaos will likely be playing out in the world. It will be those loving bonds that you have with people that will greatly help you through these times. So on that note, I wish you many blessings in navigating your way through any relationship challenges you may be experiencing these days. And know that it will get easier as time goes on and things get sorted through. They will be getting sorted through. Much love to you.